Hi, I'm Johnny from UltimatePaperMache.com, and I got the paint and feathers on my bird masks, and I'm going to show you how to do it in this video. This is what they looked like when the pattern pieces were all taped together. And then this is how they turned out after all the painting and all the feathers were added. In a previous video, I actually used the patterns for an experiment that I did on tape mache. So 2 of these birds had tape mache or next care tape over them instead of paper mache, and then the third one actually has real paper mache using, in this case, wood glue and newspaper strips. You can do it any way you want to. The tape was a lot faster than just paper mache, and it actually worked pretty good. Go ahead and watch that video if you'd like to see how that turned out. The third one that actually used the wood glue, I used that because it dries so much faster than regular paper mache paste, and I was kind of in a hurry to get all these done. But if you do use a paste with water in it, like water and flour, you know, the usual ordinary one, then I think you probably want to cover these with some masking tape first. Just because I designed these patterns with pretty large pieces because I wanted them to go together really fast so that we could get to the fun part of painting and putting the feathers on. But large flat pieces of cardboard will warp if it gets wet on one side. So if you want to use the normal regular paper mache paste, just cover them with masking tape first, and that'll keep the cardboard from getting wet. Now, after the either tape mache or paper mache was on the masks, I did use some modeling paste on all of them. Where is it? Right here. I used this stuff. I'd never used this before, but I really like it. And it actually did dry pretty fast. It took maybe a couple of hours to completely dry. I used it to make some feather textures. On the Himalayan Monal, I don't think the modeling paste was really useful because the way I painted it, the texture got lost. But it did show up on the other 2. So if you have some, you might want to try using it. And then after that, all 3 of the masks were spray painted with a white primer. Just as soon as the primer was dry, I started painting them and then putting the feathers on. And I really didn't know what I was doing. You're going to be able to see that. And even with the painting, there's a couple of areas, like with the beak on the Himalayan Monal, that it was just, I'm kind of hoping that you'll avert your eyes when you see it because it was pretty bad. But then in the end, I think they turned out okay. So go ahead and watch the video. But remember, this is not a how-to. I don't know exactly how to finish your mask. You can do it any way you want to, any colors you want to. Go ahead and look at photographs of the real birds if you want to, or just make one up. And you can use any feathers you want to. If you'd like to use my patterns and make yourself a bird mask, you can find them at ultimatepapermache.com/bird masks. There is a small charge for them. And if you do make one, please come back to the website and show it off. I would love to see how it comes out. So now let's go ahead and get started. I'll show you how I finish these guys up. I decided on the Monal that I really liked the triangular feathers that kind of stick out on the Monal's neck. They don't have any of those feathers on the head. I decided to go ahead and give them some anyway. It's not quite realistic, but I just, I'm just having fun, so it's okay. I drew some intersecting lines on a piece of cardstock and cut out a pile of diamonds of different sizes. Then I cut the bottom points off of the larger ones. I bent the bottom back and I used hot glue to stick them to the mask so that the feathers would kind of stick out away from the base. But because they don't really belong in the face, I didn't want to use very many, so I just put them right around that edge. I added smaller ones towards the front just to blend them in, and I also put some of the cardstock feathers around that bump that's going to hold up his headdress feathers. And then I used more modeling paste to cover the front edge of all those paper feathers to make them blend in better with the rest of the head. After I put those feathers and the modeling paste on there, I tried cutting a hole for the elastic strap with my hole puncher. That worked just fine on the T-Rex because on that one I was using cereal box cardboard and regular paper mache. But on this one, I used that Next Care tape instead of paper mache, and the hole punch won't go through it. So I gave that up, and I went ahead and drilled the holes in all of the masks after all the painting and feathers were done. I really should have done it first, but I did it last. It still worked, but you'll probably want to do it in the right order. I painted the eye spots. Those are pieces 14 and 15. And I used a metallic teal craft paint. I kind of splurged on this project and bought several different kinds of paint that I've never used before, and this is one of them. The Himalayan Monal is also called the 9-color bird. So they have a lot of different colors to pick, and depending on where the light is coming from, when the photograph of the birds is taken, the colors look different. So you have a lot of choices about how you want to paint your mask. But the eye spots on most of them do look teal or light blue, so that's what I chose. Then I prepared the feathers for his top knot. In the photos, they look like they have no barbs at all along the spine until the very top. In order to get the look that I thought was right, I went ahead and cut off all of the barbs all along the whole stalk or spine. I don't know what, there's a name for that. You know, the wire type thing that holds all of the feather together. I went ahead and used scissors and just cut most of it off. I'm using black dyed rooster feathers. When the modeling paste was dry, I put the eye spots and feathers off to the side, and I painted the entire mask with a metallic black. I was hoping that this would help the painted feathers stand out. I'm going to paint the feathers really fast and really simply, and I just wanted something that would kind of help bring them out a little bit more. And then I tried to paint the beak. It went really bad, so ignore this if you can. I'm going to fix it later. I painted the cardstock feathers with red, purple, and green metallic colors after the black was dry. If you want more color ideas, you can actually look up Kevin from the movie Up. He's supposed to be modeled after a Himalayan Monal. So if you're looking for colors, that would be kind of a fun way to look him up. Once I had those big paper feathers painted, I used 3 different colors of metallic green. And I just started to paint small feathers all along the entire mask except for the beak and an area around the eyes that's going to be black. After painting the black around the eyes, I covered that horrible yellow on the beak with the same color. When you're looking really carefully at all the photos of the Himalayan Monal, every single one of them looks to be different. On some of them, it looks like he's got kind of a blue area on the beak. So I tried using the Folk Arts Color Shift Violet Flash, and it looks mostly gold when seen from one angle with a glimmer of violet from the other. And of course, it's not realistic, but I decided I liked it, and I definitely liked it better than that horrible yellow that I put on before. I added another coat of red and violet metallic paint onto those back feathers because they just weren't quite bright enough. And then I added the teal eye spots that I'd already painted with hot glue. I used the Folk Art iridescent green violet top coat over everything except for the beak and the eye spots, and it made a really subtle difference in the way the light bounces off the mask. It didn't change the color at all, but it does have some iridescent qualities, and so it changes the way the light bounces. It also, for some reason, makes the modeling paste texture stand out a little more. Now, even though I really am having fun with all these metallic and color shift and iridescent paints that I'm using, they're brand new to me. I've never used them before, and seriously, they're not essential. I just had a lot of fun playing with them. On the head crest, that's the last thing we have to do here. Some of the Monals have their feathers leaning out way over their heads. And then sometimes they're going straight up and sometimes they're going straight back. I don't know if that's because of what mood they're in, or I don't know. But I decided that I was going to put mine going forward because I'm going to be hanging my mask on the wall. It would also be possible to make them go backwards because of the way that little pointy thing is designed on the back of his head. That was kind of why I made it into a pyramid shape, so that you could make your feathers go in any way you want to, depending on your mood. I used E600 glue to stick the feathers behind the fake cardstock feathers, but this was before I read the health warnings on the container. I did use it for a few of the feathers on the cockatoo also, but once I found out all the health warnings they've got on it, I don't think I'm going to use it again. Now, the one last thing I was going to do, I actually wasn't going to do at all. The real birds have a light stripe right around their eyes, and I wasn't going to use it because that one light area is the only light color on the entire face, and I thought it would make the eyes too prominent, be like the first thing you see. But in the end, I went ahead and added it anyway, just to see what it would do. I used the Color Shift white flash paint. Again, just regular white would work. And it does make the eyes stand out for sure. And it really is the first thing you see. So go ahead and decide if you want to do it or not. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. On the other hand, it is kind of cool if you're in a party. It's kind of nice to stand out. Aside from just all the wild colors that you have on the mask, having people see your eyes is kind of a good idea. So I would probably do it again. After that, it was all done. I added the elastic strap and I was ready for the next mask. The Guinea Turaco is a strange looking bird from West Africa, and his feathers on his head go straight up into a kind of a pointed wedge. I used some dyed rooster feathers. Now, by pure coincidence, I happen to have some craft paint that exactly matched the dyed feathers that I've got. It's called Folk Art Fresh Cut Gras. It saved me a ton of time because I have a really hard time mixing greens right, and this was just a perfect match. I covered the entire mask except for the beak with the green, and I just did that so none of the white primer is going to show through the feathers. Then I painted the beak a burnt sienna with just a small dab of black to make it less bright. And I added a little spot of black at the tip of his beak, and I put 2 spots for his nostrils with the black. I brushed some of the green over the base of the beak just to soften the edges a little bit. And I'm going to come back to the beak in just a few minutes after the brown's dry and just do one more step to it. The eye spots are a bright, warm red. I just mixed cadmium red with a touch of warm yellow, and I gave the eye spots several coats of the paint just to cover up the number that was printed on them, and then I set those aside. Now I'm going back to the beak because that paint is dry now, and I softened that color up with a thin coat of the Color Shift Pink Flash. And that actually works kind of cool. Just like on the Monal, it's got mostly gold colors when you're looking at it from one side, and then it's just got a little bit of pink or red looking at it from the other direction, and I think it looks really nice. Not realistic, but fun. And then it was time to work on those feathers. I separated out the left curving and the right curving feathers so that they'd all end up curving towards the front of the mask after they were glued on. And then I cut 2 strips of paper that are about the width of the back portion of the mask where those longer feathers are going to go. I painted the strips of paper green because I didn't want the white paper showing off underneath the feathers. And then I cut the feathers to basically all of them the same length. I used the hot glue to attach the feathers to the green strip of paper, which took a while. I stuck the green paper strips onto the mask, of course, using more hot glue. I added a few short feathers to the front, between the eyes. I didn't have the camera turned on though. Forgot. Sorry. And then I used my X-Acto knife to cut the shaft at the bottom of one of the green feathers to create a really skinny strip of that downy area. And I used a tiny amount of hot glue to stick those little strips right underneath the other feathers that are on that front area between the eyes. I cut some fake feathers again out of 2 wide strips of paper, just by making a ragged edge on one side. And I painted that green, and I'm going to use this to cover the base of the feathers on the side of the mask. I put the red eye spots on with hot glue, and then I painted on the white and black areas that are on the Guinea Turaco's face. They're really cool, so make sure that you look at some photos to see how to really do it. I think I came pretty close, and it really stands out because of the black and red and white all together like that. When the eye paint was dry enough so that I could handle the mask again, and the green on the paper feather strip was all dry, I used hot glue to attach that at the base of the big feathers. And then I used more modeling paste over it because I'm trying to match the texture that's on the paper strip with the texture that's already on the mask. Now to brighten her up just a little bit, I added a coat of the Flash Iridescent top coat. And like with the Monal, it didn't change the color, but I do like the way the light hits it. So I think I would go ahead and use it again, but it is totally not necessary. It's a top coat, so it's basically varnish with a little bit of sparkles in it. And I did use the color shift white over the white spots on her face and the pink flash over her eye spots. Just plain old acrylic paint on the eye spots would be just fine. You don't have to use the flashy paint. I just happened to have some and I wanted to play with it. Now in the end, of course, I went ahead and drilled a hole at the back and added the elastic strap and tied it off with a square knot like I did with the other masks. And this is how she looks when it's all done. For the Umbrella Cockatoo, I started out by painting his eye spots a light blue using just a cool blue and white. I painted the mask itself a pure white with acrylic paint. I didn't paint the beak white, of course. I painted that with black mixed with some burnt sienna just to warm it up a little bit. I did several other things over the course of the project on that beak too. For some reason, the beaks on both this bird and the monal really caused me a lot of problems. But I did eventually make it quite a lot lighter than this, and it ended up looking more like a dark stainless steel instead of coal. But we'll have to wait. I did that over the course of the project. When the paint was dry, I added a wash. It was just water with the teeniest touch of black. And I just did that to soften up that white color so it wasn't quite so glaring and to make it look just a little bit closer to the white feathers. The feathers themselves are white, but because you can see through them, they don't look pure white when you back off just a little bit. I just wanted the mask to match a little bit better. And I do think that the wash helped, but it's kind of hard to see even when you know it's there. So I don't know if it was absolutely necessary. I brushed some black color shift paint over the beak. That was just one of the first changes I made to it. Totally unnecessary because that got totally covered up. I separated out the white feathers with the left curving and the right curving. And I found the longest and the nicest one for the center feather. The whole head crest of the cockatoo should have been taller. But I ordered 2 sets of white feathers. The first set was goose feathers, and that's what I'm using mostly here. But I was worried that they weren't quite tall enough, so I ordered another set of turkey feathers. They also had a nice rounded top to them in the picture on the Amazon. But when I got them out of the package, it turned out that they were definitely long enough, but they were round because somebody had taken scissors to the feathers. They didn't do a very good job. Most of them were kind of broken, and I found one basically that I could use. And it was kind of disappointing because all the other feathers that I ordered were really nice. It was just that one package that's just very disappointing. So I used that one for the center. I probably would have used 5 of the tall ones if I could have found 5 that would work. I glued the first row of the white feathers on with the E6000 glue. And that's when I decided to go ahead and read the label. And for the rest of the cockatoo, I used the hot glue, which worked just fine. I actually tested it. I kind of waved it around in the air and sort of pulled on some of the feathers, and the hot glue worked just fine. So skip the E6000. For the very last layer, I cut just a short length of the top of some of the white feathers, and I glued those on so the ends of the shaft are going to be hidden under that blue eye spot. And then I used hot glue to attach the blue circles onto the mask. A cockatoo's eyes are black, surrounded by that light blue skin, so I painted the edges of the eye holes black. I'm still playing around with the beak, so I added a thin coat of the violet color flash, but that really didn't do it for me. I did add a little bit of the blue flash to the eye spots just to give them some sparkle. But it was too dark, so I covered it up with another layer of the light blue. There aren't any sparkles, but it's a little bit closer to the color I wanted. I really thought that the mask was done at this point, but I looked at it for a while and I still wasn't happy with that beak. It was just too dark. So I added some white to some of the black flash acrylic paint that I got, that I've been playing with throughout this whole project. It makes a nice dark gray. I just brushed it on and then wiped most of it off with a paper towel just to give it some variation and make it look, I don't know, a little bit more organic or something. And when that was dry, I added just a couple of brush strokes of the white flash that I mixed with a little bit of water just to make sure that it didn't end up real white. I dabbed most of that off too, and it did end up with kind of a nice metallic look, which is cool. It's not any way realistic, but I actually kind of like it. So, and it matches the style of the other mask that I made. So I'm happy with it. And I quit. It's kind of fun. This whole project's been kind of fun because I've made so many realistic animal sculptures, and in this case, I'm really not, I'm trying to push myself out of my comfort zone, I guess you might say, just allowing things to happen with wild colors and crazy metallics and sparkly things, and it's really been fun. If you do want to make one of these guys or have a mask making party and make all three, you can find them at ultimatepapermache.com/birdmasks, and if you do make one, please come back to my website and show it off. You can do that on the Daily Sculptors page. I would really like to see how they come out. Now go make something and then come visit me at ultimatepapermache.com. I'll see you there.